My name's Chris Phillip.
My name is Paul Anderson.
My name is Mark Boyd.
Hello, my name is Derek Combs, and I listen to the Blue Army podcast.
My name is Matty Robson, and you're listening to the Blue Army podcast.
Hiya.
Hello, Z's.
Yeah, mate.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, can hear me okay?
Everyone's all good, yeah.
Before we start, by the way, all day, it hasn't charged properly. It's on 30%, but if I go off all of a sudden, I've got like my old laptop ready just to join. But if I disconnect, I'll come back on as soon as I can.
Oh, yeah, won't worry about it then. That's all right. Well, I mean, we'll try and keep this like short and sweet. You know what I mean? We'll keep it bish bash bosh, and we'll try and keep it cool and snappy. Man, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again, man. I know it's been a bit of a while. I mean, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and all that good jazz. Let's do it. Right, Maris, how's it going? And welcome back to the Blue Army podcast. This is episode 90. I've just knocked my camera. Oh, look out, here we go. There we go, boys can still see me. And I am absolutely buzzing to be back with this episode 90 of the Blue Army podcast. Sorry we've been away. We did explain it a little bit. We just got a little bit busy. We got some new jobs. Well, some of us did, and some of us are just busy doing other things. It was Christmas, but we are back. And we've only got 10 episodes until episode 100. So me and the boys are going to probably, after this chat, get offline and maybe think of something we could do for episode 100 that might be a little bit more interactive with people. I mean, that might be quite fun to meet a few of the listeners of the Blue Army podcast somewhere, maybe just at the fan zone after a game or something like that. A nice little simple meet and greet. We'll put our heads together. We'll come up with something cool for episode 100. But let me introduce you, the listeners, to your two favourite co-hosts here on the Blue Army podcast. You can't have forgotten them already. It hasn't been that long. That's right. I'm talking about Liam from Blue Army TV, the YouTube channel, and Wills. Welcome back, lads. Happy New Year's, Merry Christmas and all that.
Hey, good to be back.
Good to be back.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you, man. It's nice to see you. I really haven't had much of a chance to talk to you. We did get together for a little bit of a drink over the festive period. That was nice. I got to see you both in person there. But the World Cup was still happening at that point, and the winner hadn't been decided by that point. In fact, I think England were maybe still in the tournament at that point when we went for that drink, were we? Can't remember.
I think we'd been knocked out the day before.
Was it a day before?
Yeah, I can remember Liam saying something about being, because Carlisle had just had that postponement.
Yeah.
And Liam, Blue Army podcast, Liam was glad Blue Army.
I'll be Skelly. I'll change my name to Skelly.
Yeah.
If you call it Skelly, that'll be all right. I'll be Skelly.
Yeah, Liam. Yeah, I remember Liam was glad that it had been postponed because he didn't want Carlisle to lose to Barrow and England get knocked out of the World Cup on the same day.
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
No, he's an optimist.
Now you've said it. Yeah, it's all come flooding back to me. But that fixture's been rearranged now for towards the end of January, isn't it?
Yeah, aye.
Quick little look at the calendar. I believe is it January 24th on the Tuesday? Was it the 31st? 31st, is it? The 31st?
Yeah.
That game's being rearranged now. Obviously, we had that game very quickly rearranged that we had cancelled against Northampton, and that went straight ahead on the Tuesday. Man, there's been so much we haven't had a chance to talk about. But before I really dive into the show properly, England obviously getting knocked out at the quarterfinals of the World Cup. I have to say, after the last couple of tournaments we've had, it was a little bit disappointing. And maybe I'm getting a bit sick of old Southgate's tricks, and I want to see someone fresh in the driving seat, maybe somebody else who might have the opportunity to bring the team forward. I mean, that's my opinion on it. And I'd have to say a personal highlight had to have been Morocco's miraculous run towards the semi-final, becoming the first ever African team to make it to a semi-final. They were magical to watch against Spain and Portugal. I really enjoyed just seeing their fans' reactions in the stadiums. And obviously, I love seeing the Spanish and the Portuguese cry when they get knocked out of the tournament. That's just hilarious. Lads, yourselves, I mean, Wills, first of all, how did you feel England fared at the World Cup this year?
Yeah, I think it's all right, considering the fact that they got knocked out by France, who were brilliant up until the final, and also the fact that I don't think England played particularly badly against France in that game either. So although you measure success on how far into the tournament you get, I think it was a decent showing for England at the tournament. I think they were knocked out. So no, I mean, I'm disappointed that we didn't go further, because we have gone, after the previous two tournaments. But all in all, I don't think it was a bad World Cup for England.
Yeah, I mean, like I've already stated how I feel about it. I'm ready to see a bit of fresh blood in the manager's seat. Liam, are you happy to stick or twist on Southgate?
He should have gone before this World Cup, to be honest with you.
Right.
You said to be sick of. He's just the most vanilla manager in the world, isn't he? He puts out a team, and that's about it. There's no tactic or anything to it, and he makes substitutions too late. He's far too defensive. I just can't get over the fact that all of our best players are attackers, and he plays with a back five. Like, he tried to get away with it by saying, "Oh, we've gone for the back four now," but then he put 3 defensive midfielders in front of it to sort of compensate for that centre back that he hasn't put in, and we still play ultra defensive stuff. We played a couple of good games. Wales, just the second half against Wales, and I think people are far too like Wales. I disagree with you massively that it was a good World Cup for England, because I think people are far, far too used to seeing England lose. It's like the whole thing of, you've seen it all before. But I think people need to understand that we probably went into that World Cup with one of the best squads, maybe other than Brazil. And we went into the Euros with one of the best squads, and we've got some of the best players in the world. We've got Harry Kane, Ford, one of the best young players in the world. Saka as well. Tamori's doing really well in Italy. He didn't even get picked for the squad. We've got one of the best teams, and I think people need to stop sort of accepting a quarter-final exit to a decent France team. People should expect more, I think.
Yeah, but let's say that instead of playing France in the quarter-final, we'd played Morocco and beaten Morocco, and then gotten through to a semi-final against France, and then got beaten by France. Would you say that we ultimately get beaten by the same team? And I'm not kind of like just dissing on Morocco here and saying we would obviously have beaten them. Just kind of like the idea that kind of like, it's kind of like if we'd say we'd been drawn against Argentina in the last 16 and beat us, would that then make us worse than who Argentina beat in the final? I think those things are like hard to say. It can be hard to kind of like hard for me anyway. The country showing at a World Cup is really an indication of how good they are as a team, or whether it's just the way the draws landed and then came up short in one game. But maybe I am too used to England losing, because I've got like 20 years experience on you of just watching England watching England. I mean, like I was kind of like brought up in football, kind of like six was decent, but it was just England have failed to qualify. England have gone out in the group stage. England have failed to qualify. England have gone out in the last 16, and it was just terrible manager after terrible manager. Yeah, and it was just terrible manager after terrible manager after terrible manager for a good 20 years, if you say the exceptions being Venables and Hoddle in that time. But and then so like when Southgate came along, things felt different, and they still do, because I'm still look decent. Who they would replace Southgate with, in my mind, it would just, the bigger risk would just be that we go back to terrible manager after terrible manager, and England failing to qualify for things again and stuff.
Yeah,
I don't think that would ever happen. would it?
No, like I just don't think we'd drop down to that standard regardless of who's in charge. Like I said, I'd like to see a game plan. I'd like to see like a clear way that we can play football. And Southgate's he's not providing that. He makes really simple moves, and it takes him ages to make those really simple moves. Just like Liam said about late substitutions, it's not always about that either. The last tournament that we had, it took him ages to put Sterling up front with Kane instead of playing him out wide. It took him like 3 games to realise Harry Kane looks isolated. Meanwhile, there's 4 million people at home going, Harry Kane's on his own, he needs more help. You know what I mean? It takes him 3 games to give Harry Kane a strike partner, and he didn't even bother this time. He didn't even bother giving him a strike partner this time, and that's why he looks so exposed. Kane plays with Son at Tottenham, and it's a partnership, the 2 strikers that play together. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't work when he plays on his own for England. He can't do anything up there on his own. He can't do it. He needs the supply, and he needs someone alongside him to help him work. And if I can see it, Southgate should be able to see it from a fucking mile off as well. And like, I feel like these such simple things, like you said, Tomori over in Italy, like winning Serie A when you're still picking Harry Maguire, like things like that don't make sense.
That's the big one, isn't it?
England's
Harry
number
Maguire.
1 when you've got Ramsdale top of the Premier League, like things like that don't make sense. They don't make sense to me, mate. Like they just don't make sense to me. And so for me, it has to be like someone else, like just someone else. Like I'd be happy to go like, God knows, like not even go for a Champions League.
It'll be Sam Allardyce again.
Somebody with,
if you have Sam Allardyce back.
At least Allardyce had this mentality of how to play, like
Over his 100% record.
Yeah, you know, like he's got that going for him as well. But like,
well, what do you think of Sean?
It could be interesting, but if it's it's a stick or twist situation, whoever you say might be the next England manager. So I'm still inclined to like stick rather than risk.
When they gave
another decade,
when they gave Southgate the job in the first place, he had less experience under his belt, arguably, than Sean Dyche has under his belt currently. So
he had less than Paul
I would maybe give
Sean
Dyche a chance. Do what, lad?
I said he had less experience than Paul. What did he do? Did he had a decent spell with the England under 21s?
Europa League, Middlesbrough.
Well, maybe that. Yeah, to be fair.
But like, still, like, this is what I'm saying. No, it's only like 2 or 3 years with the same team with, do you know what I mean? Like mediocre results. You've got to remember at the time, Middlesbrough were a Europa League team. They were a rival for Newcastle very regularly. Like, and Newcastle were a Champions League top 4 team at that time as well. It was Middlesbrough and Newcastle were 2 better teams than Sunderland ever was, even though Sunderland managed to like outlast them for a little bit before they've had their decline, obviously. Anyways, we could go on about England all day, and next week we don't have any football to talk about, so maybe next week we will. Maybe next week we will go on about England a little bit more. Obviously, next week we'll be talking a little bit more about transfers as well. But on this episode of the Blue Army podcast, we've got 3 games to catch up on. So I feel like we're probably better off diving in with the most recent in the memory, and we'll make our way sort of backwards. So we'll dive in with Carlisle United's 2-1 loss against Doncaster. Obviously, another reason I've done this is because rather than ending on a loss, we'll get to end on a bit of a nicer note at the end of the podcast, talking about the 2 wins. But like, we'll dive in. We'll talk about this 2-1 defeat. I mean, it's similar, eerily similar to me as what the Northampton game was like. It's like we've got chances of winning these games, but it is big mistakes that we're making. And the opening goal in this game is, I mean, first of all, it's Joel Senior's mistake, and then second of all, it's Thomas Hoyley's mistake for not being able to cover his goal with like telescopic limbs. Because I don't understand how he can't close down that small gap that the striker still had to score into. But yeah, we'll talk through the first goal, Carlisle United versus Doncaster. The ball comes in from a throw-in position on the right-hand side, goes straight into the Carlisle box between the lines, and it does seem like a lot of defenders, a lot of teams are getting used to where our lines are, the lines between Huntington and the fullback, or between Feeney and the fullback. They're getting used to how we sort of line up. There's plenty of Doncaster men in the box when the ball does go across the 6-yard box, and I mean, We'll talk about this in a minute. Joel Senior loses sight of the ball. It goes kind of between his legs, ricochets off his heel, ends up right in front of the fullback, and he just somehow, I'm going to say it again, somehow finds the gap between Hoyley and the other side of his goal, even though he's probably got half a yard of space and angle to slot it into. That Hoyley just needs to cover that half a yard of space. I mean, it's disappointing. It's an early goal. And how many minutes was it in? Only 5 minutes in. Fullback scores. It's our mistake. We're 1-0 down. Liam, first of all, what do you think happened to Senior there? You're a bit of you've hyped him up a little bit before. Obviously, we've not really had a good chance to look at him, so I'm not going to dig you out for like giving him a bit of love. You can give anyone a bit of love after seeing them once or twice. But yeah, he's made a hash out of this one. He kind of made up for it later in the game by looking half decent going forward. But mate, what happened there?
I think we'd seen it. The thing, he looked good all game except for that sort of mad moment. The ball comes across him. He does a weird sort of 360 that I honestly can't explain much. Does he lose where the ball is? But look, it is a mistake from him. But I think it's worth noting that he hasn't played in a year. Like, this is his first professional game back, and I think probably 20 minutes at the end of a game or something like that. But because of the injuries happening, obviously Finn back and Jack Ellis now injured, he's been thrown right into a league game, and a difficult one at that, because Doncaster are a good team, despite what I said in my pre-season predictions. Yeah, and as well, he played well. I think with a player coming back from injury like that, he's not match fit. He really isn't match fit. You're going to get them little errors from him, and I thought it was a good performance from him overall. And as well, if Thomas Hawley saves that, which he the match, because that in, and you focus on his positives, and you think, oh, Joel Senior's had a really good game, but because he makes one error that leads to a really unfortunate goal that the keeper definitely should have saved anyways, I feel like he'll probably get a lot of criticism for it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was going to ask you about Thomas Hoyley there. I mean, surely he should have done better with that, and Senior should have done better as well. It's just disappointing to see more mistakes from Carlisle's defence.
Yeah, it was just like, I agree with Liam. I think Senior just doesn't know where the ball is. It's unfortunate. It's a mistake, and it's come just a few minutes into his first game in around about a year. He did, I thought he kind of like showed good, a good composure to kind of like, recover a bit and not let that just affect his game. And although Holy should have got to it, you'd think, you shouldn't be as well. Kind of got to hold your hand up and say that was it was well done by the striker. We looked like a team that either hadn't, had been thrown together a bit late, or hadn't had enough chances for those players to play together, and especially in the opening minutes where we conceded that goal, just kind of like looked very out of sorts.
Yeah. I mean, it's just disappointing. Obviously, we didn't get to talk about the Northampton game either, but that was the last loss that we had, and obviously Huntington's weak ball back was a big factor in us just eventually losing the game, resulting in that goal. It's just disappointing to see us make a couple of mistakes so close together. But then again, when you are playing so many games so close together, maybe you're going to see mistakes a little bit more often over this period. But yeah, we're 1-0 down. I don't think Carlisle did that badly for the rest of the first half. I feel like there was indications after the change when Toby Silva had to come on. There was a little bit of a change in the shape. Simpson was obviously thinking about making more tweaks, and he did make more tweaks at half time. I feel like we grew into it a little bit more, and by the end of the first half, you would have thought we were unlucky not to get an equaliser, really. I know there was just a few sort of like half opportunities, nothing really cottoned on, but we were on the ball quite comfortably. We seemed to be passing it around quite well, and something that we've been quite guilty of in the last couple of games is trying to force a goal, trying to move forward where the pass isn't always on. Maybe this happens when you've got young, ambitious midfielders like Charters and Moxon that maybe don't always have the experience to look over the shoulder and pass it back rather than trying to go for the crazy ball forward on every occasion. But I feel like we did okay. we came out fighting, all guns blazing for the second half, and I think we were quite unlucky to go 2-0 down. And the way that we went 2-0 down was, I mean, it was really good play from Doncaster, unfortunately. The ball goes to the right back, who passes it infield, who then passes through Carlisle's defence. The striker takes it on really well and just rounds Hawley, squares it into his partner, and it just ends up in the back of the Carlisle net. I mean, that's decent football, and there's only a certain amount of magic you can get with decent football. That's kind of the goal that you don't necessarily mind conceding. Yeah, you mind conceding every single goal you concede, but I mean, when it's silky and it's smooth and there's not necessarily obvious mistakes being made, it's more forgivable, isn't it, Wills?
Yeah, I mean, like, I came on here already to say that the performances against Doncaster and Northampton were poor performances, but, you know, our standards are higher and we're up near the top of the table. So we're not losing games because we're clearly second best. We're not getting kind of like soundly beaten by teams because we made a couple of mistakes because, as you say, we kind of, you know, try and force it a bit and don't quite stick to our game plan. So, you know, these are losing games in a way that teams that, touch wood, are going for promotion will lose games. Not as bad as some of the, you know, previous seasons where we've come on and just said that was absolutely shambolic. So yeah, fairly critical of them still. Just didn't seem to have that kind of like clear shape and game plan, particularly against Doncaster. One thing I noticed in the stats in the Doncaster game was that the possessions were close to equal between the two teams. Against Crewe, we had about 30% possession, and we've been having a lot of games with little possession. It's obviously part of Simpson's game plan is keep the shape, don't get pulled around half, let them, and look to break quickly when you get the ball, press them when they come into your half. And I felt like, you know, we weren't doing that as well in those games. And so like almost consequentially, it seems that we end up actually having more possession because we seem to be doing more with the ball, but that's not really how we play.
Yeah, I mean, Liam, it is a decent looking goal, but are you a little bit disappointed maybe the way the Carlisle's defence was so easily sliced open by the through ball in the first place? And it does seem like a lot of teams are finding the gaps between our defenders.
Yeah.
Is that you?
Go on,
Yeah,
Liam.
sorry.
No,
You on that, Will? You on that?
No,
Go
sorry, it keeps cutting out, so I don't necessarily know who you're speaking to because the bit where you said got cut out.
Apologies. Liam, did you hear that one?
Yeah.
Sorry, lad.
I think with that goal, it looked a good ball through, and you can maybe consider that the defenders probably should have done a little bit better with the gap. But how Thomas Hawley is coming and claiming that, I'll never know, because he's out, he's ready to come and claim that ball. He either needs to be on his line waiting for the shot or out to claim that ball, which he was. But he doesn't get there in time, and he could have got there in time. And it's a problem that Thomas Hawley seems to have, where he's absolutely massive. Like he won't come out for crosses, which I've noticed recently, from corners, often just high crosses. And he really should have come out and got that ball through because it was well within his range for him to come and do that. Because and if that happens, you say, all right, it's a poor through ball because the keeper's come and claimed it. And that's what it definitely should have been. It was well in his box. He was already out to come and wait for that through ball. And then he just doesn't do anything with it. And they dribble it round him, cross across. For both goals, I think the keeper should have done a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, he has got his bits to blame there. He really does. I mean, yeah, you're quite right to point out the fact that I don't know if he was slow off his line or maybe doesn't have the confidence to go down and claim the ball. I really don't know what the issue was. Maybe his timing's just all wrong. I mean, a little bit of credit where credit's due. Thomas Hoyley was on hand to give the assist for Carlisle's constellation goal that we scored late on through Christian Dennis. Long ball from the goalkeeper after a free kick was given for an offside, I believe. That's flicked on by Toby Shaw-Silver into the path of Christian Dennis, who slots on very nicely, to be fair to him, and not as coolly as his goal against Crewe, but I mean, his goal scoring continues. Carlisle looked to try and get back into the game later on, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough, boys, and we went down swinging 2-1, and it's difficult to really give a man of the match for a loss, but because we've missed a couple of games, I think I'm going to ask you for a man of the festive period. So we'll give it a little bit of time before we do that. And first off, I mean, it's disappointing. It's a 2-1 loss. Things aren't going very well as we go into January. It's 6 out of the last 9 possible points. When you think about it, though, it is 6 out of the last 12 possible points also in the league. And as we go into January with an injury list as long as your arm, in fact, I've made a list. You've got Edmore, Stretton, Charters, Dickinson, Ellis, Barkley, Patrick and Dixon all out missing at the moment. Simo, in every interview, is asked about his January transfer targets, and he seems to have to keep changing his answers and adapting to this massive injury list. Lads, Liam, what can we do, man? There's so many injuries. Where do you strengthen first?
Strengthen first, I think probably a striker or a sort of winger. But at the same time, I think that area is really reinforced when Amari Patrick comes back. I think you've got to buy cover for right back. As much as I like Joe Senior, there isn't any cover at all for that position now. And you've got, I know Jack Ellis will be back before long, but it's that sort of juggling act of, do you buy players that are all going to come back sort of thing? Maybe a midfielder, but at the same time, you've got players coming back in that position as well. I think the thing that needs to be taken who's going to leave, because I think there might be a couple of loan players leaving that you might have to bring in replacements for, maybe Sonny Hilton or the likes of him. I don't think Jack Stretton will go, but maybe with his injury, we don't know about that is yet. Maybe we need a new striker to cover him. I think you should bring in a couple of loan players, and I'd like to see a good think that there is a striker on our list that the fans are going to enjoy. Now, I've heard people say Joe Garner, I've heard people say Ashley Nadesan. I've heard a lot of ex-Carlisle player names mentioned. I don't know how true any of those are, but just a decent striker to come in I think would be the big priority for me.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of a little bit of all over the pitch, like you've said. But Will, do you have like a certain area where you'd be most keen to strengthen? We've got 2 weeks, haven't we, before the next game? So you've got 2 weeks to bring in a couple of players. Where's your priorities?
I think probably want to bring in someone to go right back, because hopefully Senior will just kick on and have a much better game, but a bit worried him being our only fit right back. And up front, because the problems that we've been having in games, I think are problems that if we just had someone who, with all due respect to Dennis, that's not quite what his game is, to just kind of like get goals out of nowhere. Someone who was just kind of like just more of a classic centre forward, the kind of someone who would guarantee you like 15 goals a season, although we're only having for half a season, and that might kind of like start to get something out of these games that we're drawing or losing games narrowly, because we'll just have that kind of can get us goals when we're not necessarily playing well.
Like that's what Omari Patrick came in and did last year, isn't it? Really, when you think about it, and he came in January and he hit, like, I think he nearly hit double figures, or he might have hit double figures in just that half a season, and that was obviously important. So hopefully, when he comes back, hopefully when he comes back from injury, he should be okay. Now, if you don't hear Mr. Liam, it's because, like he warned us earlier on at the start of the podcast, that his battery might die on the device he's using to record with currently, but he'll be able to load up his laptop and dive back on this call. So hopefully he'll be back before we hit that kind of man of the match period. So, I mean, yeah, we'll cover more transfer news next week, Wills, and because we don't really have any football to talk about. But the next time we do have football to talk about, it's going to be from the 14th of January, and it's going to be against Newport. Obviously, we can't see into the future. We don't know if Simo's going to be able to bring in more people and where those people might appear from. But can you maybe give us a prediction for the results against Newport?
So Newport have not been doing particularly well this season. They're kind of down in the struggles. I've noticed a couple of games they've had recently. Zanzala's been coming off the bench, scoring late goals for them. Hopefully, late equalizers. Hopefully, he doesn't. Going to Newport away is always a bit of a tough one, but I don't think they're a team that are going to come to Brunton Park and cause us any particular problems. I think we're going to win 2-0.
Yeah. I mean, like that sounds about right to me as well. I mean, we do seem to do quite well this season against those teams that we should do quite well against. And I think we're going to do quite well against these guys. I think 2-0 is probably a fair result, and Dennis's goal scoring form is going to continue. And I fancy Guy for a goal, to be completely honest. It's about time. He needs to add to that goal tally for him to get in towards those double figures. So he needs to hit that goal tally.
Are you just saying that because Liam's not back yet?
I mean, I'd love to rub it in his face a bit more and get the banter going a bit. But like you said, Liam isn't back yet, so unfortunately he won't be able to give us his predictions for the game against Newport. But what else have we got to talk about here? What else can I patter with before Liam comes back?
So you're waiting for, so we need to wait for Liam. Is there anything or anyone you'd like to mention from them games?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously there's the Crewe game, and what was the other game? Bradford.
Yeah.
Bradford
I mean, I feel like we
home.
haven't really necessarily had the chance on this podcast to really kind of like big up the things that we thought that we were doing well in those two games, because by the time we've got the opportunity to talk about it, we've gone and lost a game, and we lost that other one before.
Well, that's it. Yeah, so let's end on a nicer, positive note.
So we went to Crewe.
Talk about those wins. Yeah, 3-0 away at Crewe, a big away win for Carlisle United. It was quite an impressive performance, especially in the second half. It just seemed like Crewe were just blown over, and they had no chance of really coming back. Oh, Denwood's coming back. I'll have to update on what we're talking about.
Unlike Crewe.
Unlike Crewe.
You'll have to...
Denwood's back in the conversation, or Liam's back in the conversation, sorry. There he is. So we were just talking, Liam. You did warn us earlier in the podcast, obviously, that you might have to disappear and rearrange your devices and stuff. So don't worry. We've just been pattering, and we've been filling in, talking about, we wanted to end things on a bit of a better note. So we've been talking about Carlisle's games before the 2-1 loss against Donny. And we were talking about the 3-0 win over Crewe and how impressive we were in the second half, how demoralised Crewe really looked in that second half. And we just kind of steamrolled them and blew all over it. And now you're back in the conversation, Liam. Was there anyone that really stood out for you? Was there anything positive? Well, obviously a lot of positives from that Crewe game that you'd like to mention.
I think the two players that stuck out to me particularly were Owen Moxon and Taylor Charters. Them two in the midfield, I think both of them got an assist. Obviously Taylor went off injured towards the end of the game, which awful news, he's going to need surgery for. But I think them two in particular, just the midfield and the midfield three looked really, really good that day. I was there. I was in the away end. And obviously the best player on the day was the 12th man in the crowd. Absolutely unreal support. I think, what was it? were we near 1,000 that day?
Yeah, it was
I remember going. Yeah, there was a lot there. I remember we sold 600 tickets before it, and I thought, oh, right, so that'll be kind of what it'll be about. I think 200 tickets were sold on the gate. I think there was over 800 there on the day.
Yeah. Amazing away
It's a
support.
long trip. It's a
Yeah.
really good support from the Carlisle fans, and they were, they were given the reward for it, and it was a brilliant performance from them three especially.
Yeah, I mean, Wales, was there anyone in particular or anything else in particular that stood out for you for that Crewe game?
No, I mean, mostly just what Liam said. I wanted to kind of give a lot of credit to Taylor Charters for the season he's having and that he was excellent in that game. Also, but, just how he's coming on as a player as well. His fourth season with us in his third different position that he's been deployed, or fourth different position that he's been deployed.
Yeah.
But he's always had qualities, even when he was used up front and it didn't quite work out. But he's really kind of settling into it now, and he's still got those unique qualities that see him ranging all over the pitch handle, because there aren't many players like him that they'll have come across before. They don't usually plan for a left centre back to suddenly run up the right wing, but stuff like that John Mellish does, and it just kind of shows how much we missed him in the Northampton game.
Yeah, I mean, you're not the only person to mention John Mellish as being the best player on the day. I went to social media on the Blue Army podcast Facebook page. If you don't follow, go over to Facebook and give us a follow. And Mr. Craig Cooper also pointed out John Mellish to be the best player in our squad, not just on the day. John Moore said Paul Huntington, as he always sorts out the defence. And then Craig Cooper piped back in and also wanted to mention Moxon, Mellish and Guy. I mean, he did just mention Mellish, but he wanted to mention Moxon and Guy as well. And Tony Worrell agreed with Craig, and he said Callum Guy was probably the best player on the pitch on the day. I mean, for me, I thought he put in a shift. I really do. And I mean, we're going to talk about our player of the festive period. And in order to do that, we will have to talk a little bit about the Bradford game, which took place on Boxing Day at home. Unfortunately, I was stuck working for a lot of it and could only get in to watch the last sort of 15 minutes of the games. But you two boys got to see the full 90. Wills, your memories from the Bradford 1-0 victory? Was it a game of boredom since it was only 1-0, or was it quite a lively fixture for you? How was it? How was the game?
Yeah, it was kind of the chances were there, and we made quite a few of them, and Bradford made quite a few as well. So only the one goal, but plenty of goal mouth action. I think for puzzled each other out a bit, because there weren't that many clear cut chances, and at times I felt that Bradford were kind of pinning us back a bit, and we couldn't really kind of get much of a control on the game. But as the game went on, we kind of showed that we could just kind of stick to our tasks, make sure that Bradford don't score. It felt almost like we were grinding out a result at home, but sometimes you just got to do that. I think neither team had played in quite a while. Bradford had gone even longer than we had without playing, so maybe it was just a little bit of rustiness. But yeah, it felt ground out, albeit with quite a bit of goal mouth action. But overall a good win for us.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a big 3 points, but it is an important 3 points, definitely. Not every team is going to be able to beat Bradford. Liam, you were obviously as well there for the full 90. I mean, how did you enjoy the fixture?
it was a good result. I just don't know how we weren't 3-0 up at half time. I think Mellish missed a really good opportunity, as good as he's been. 2 even. Dennis had a couple. No, he didn't. Sorry, not Dennis. Gibson.
Yeah,
Gibson with
Gibson
that
blazed
excellent.
one over.
Yeah.
I don't think Mellish was really at fault for the one that the header, because he was coming up at him. He'd have had to get really high above it in order to be able to head that back down. It kind of like the ball kind of like almost glanced off his forehead going upwards and then just continued its upward trajectory over the bar.
You're going to get your 2.
This was at the Warwick end. This was at the Warwick Road end. So I was like,
you'll have had a much better view than me.
Yeah, the direction the ball came from. I don't see what more he could have done to actually direct that downwards.
Yeah,
right, fair dues.
Yeah. I mean, going as far as that. Technically, John Mellish won the most man of the matches over the period. He might be the person you go for your sort of festive period Foxes feature man of the matches. But me, I'm going to go first this time. And I'm going to go for Christian Dennis. I know he didn't start every single game of the festive period, but he was productive and he got the goals where he needed to get the goals to make us feel comfortable or to just get us over the line, or just whatever it was. I just like Dennis, man. I just feel like he contributed a lot over the festive period. He is sometimes the only threat for most periods of the game, large periods of the game. Sometimes the only threat we have going forward, or at least in the early part of those fixtures. And I just rate him really. I just feel like this is his time of year. He likes the fixtures coming thick and fast, so he can really add to his goal tally. And he looks sharp, he looks decent, and he looks ready to go. Liam, who's your man of the festive period?
Bit too, but I think the big one's got to be John Mellish, like you said. He's really good, and I think the reason I'm giving it to him is that you can tell how much we need him when we played Northampton. Like, you can tell how much we miss him when he's not in the team. Like, he's so good, and he's the perfect player for Paul Simpson's team. I've been saying it for a bit. BBC Radio Cumbria stole my term, so I'm not going to get too mad at that. But I've always referred to him as the league's first. Attacking centre. That's what he is. He's an attacking centre back in a back five, and there's no one like him. And I love him. He's my man of the matches.
Yeah.
John Mellish, and I pretty much covered the reasons why before. I think while Liam was still out sorting his computer, but he's kind of like he's really showed. The fact that the one match we didn't play, we missed him, and the fact that teams don't really know how to handle him. He's unique, he's special. There aren't any players like him. So, I feel like he's an important asset that this football club has, and someone like, the more we can get out of John Mellish, the better we'll do.
Yeah. And if any other clubs are listening out there, keep your hands off Mellish, because it is officially now, gentlemen.
If any other clubs...
Go on, what did you say?
Then your manager, if any other clubs are listening, then your manager isn't good enough to get the best out of John Mellish. So
you wouldn't know what to do with him anyway. You wouldn't know what to do with Mellish. You wouldn't know what to do with Mellish if he was staring right in the face. You wouldn't know what to do with him. But it is officially, the transfer window is open, and like we've already mentioned in this podcast, maybe a few times by now, there isn't going to be much football for us to talk about after the next weekend, so maybe we're going to do a little bit of a transfer rumour roundup. Hopefully there'll be a little bit of actual transfer news that might have gone through by next week, and we might actually get to do a bit of a profile on a new signing. There might be some people leaving, like Liam mentioned earlier. Maybe a couple of loan players might go back. We don't know, but hopefully there'll be a bit of news for us to talk about and cover next week. But on this show, gentlemen, there isn't really much left for us really to do apart from saying bye for now.
Bye for now.
We're back because it's all me, it's all my fault, isn't it? I've forgotten to do the joke of the week, and You know, I normally don't forget doing joke of the week, so it felt very strange. First, we've signed off there about doing the jokes of the week, so that means it's time for one thing and one thing only. It's time for the Blue Army podcast. You come the week. Last minute edition.
Hooray!
If there's anyone still listening by the end of the podcast, I'm pretty sure they'll enjoy it. And maybe it'll stop any comments about asking where it's gone. But anyways, the joke of the week. Why is Cinderella so bad at sports?
What a
Don't know, lads. Don't know. Because she keeps running away
No.
from the ball.
Wow.
Wow, what a surprise!
That was what I went back for. And then there really isn't anything else left to do apart from saying bye for now.
Bye for
Bye.
now.